Alrighty then. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And as you know, this is the number one place where you discover the strategies, the stories, and proven methods behind some of the most successful entrepreneurs, business owners, and thought leaders. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've ever wondered how some people seem to maybe bounce back stronger after losing everything, then today's episode is for you because our guest has actually built, scaled, sold, lost, rebuilt, reinvented businesses across multiple industries for more than 4 decades. And he's actually launched not one, not two, not three, not 10, but 19 ventures, and it's even more than that if I'm not mistaken, and he's achieved obviously seven-figure success, experienced all the crushing setbacks that come along with that, and turned those scars into systems that he now helps entrepreneurs grow smarter, safer, and faster. So I can't wait to introduce you to our returning guest, Nathan. Welcome to the show.
Lovely. What an intro, mate. My God, I feel like going out there swinging. That's brilliant. Hi, Prosper. Lovely to be back with you
Absolutely. I
again.
just I just pulled this back from your appearance on TV, everything else that you've done. It was easy, mate. It wrote itself.
That's a lovely intro. Yeah, good to be back, mate. We've got some lots of exciting stuff that we're up to now. So,
Absolutely. Great
uh,
stuff. And trust me, for those that are watching, if you've ever made a business decision based on confidence instead of evidence, you're going to want to hear every minute of this conversation because we're going to be unpacking the highs, the lows, the lessons, and the strategies that Nathan now uses to help businesses grow without betting the farm. So you're going to want to share this episode with every entrepreneur that you know. But before you do that, make sure you're subscribed to the Online Prosperity Show because we bring conversations like this every single week. Now, Nathan, I'm really, really excited about what we're gonna talk about today. It's been 2 years since we last met. What's been happening?
yeah, lots of action since then. As you know, I just love business in any shape or form, and there's just the way the world is. There seems to be so many problems out there, and I always think business is the most effective method for actually bringing about change, improving problems, solving problems, and getting commercially rewarded for it. So. In the last couple of years, yeah, it's been a very active growth period. We've started a bunch of new businesses and growing other ones. So changing directions, pivoting, seeing what works, doubling down on that, getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work, and just really focusing on where the energy is flowing. So yeah, there's a lot of action in. So Tommy Sugo, for example, which is one of my main businesses, that was what we're on Shark Tank for. We're getting some lovely growth. I think we're 14. Well, 2014, it was the start of that business. So, what's that, 12 years, if I've done my maths correctly, and currently. And yeah, we're getting around 98% growth per year at this stage, which is lovely. But through totally different, very, very different to how the business was 2 years ago and where we're focusing on and where we're putting our time and energy into. So, we're doing lots of strategies for growth. We've got the home deliveries that we do of our cook at home range of meals, which we do in Western Australia. We're having some fun with SMS marketing, a very, very cheap, very effective way. We've always struggled with email marketing, getting it into the inbox and getting them opened and getting a response, but we've more recently changed and implemented SMS with email. So we're sort of hitting people both and doing some pretty funny little outreaches too to grab attention in the SMSs, telling people we love them. That's been a nice little strategy. So we'll send an SMS message saying, I love you XXX. and then we'll leave a bunch of lines so that that comes up on their phone when we message them, and then they open it up and saying, and we love all our customers, so here's a special offer for you. So that's working really, really well. And I mean, the return on investments for an SMS is just phenomenal. We're in the thousands of percent. You know, when you compare it to 3 cents to send a SMS and, you know, $100, a couple $100 orders that come in off the back of it. So the SMS is quite exciting for us right now.
And congratulations. I mean, obviously, you're tapping into a human behavior that there's something about a text message that you just can't ignore. You know what I mean? No matter where it's coming from, no matter what it says, text messages are one of those things that we've been preconditioned, even in the, dinosaur days of phones. That was the first sort of thing that everybody
Mm.
learned to utilize. So text message is one of those things that I feel like so many people can't naturally ignore because that was their entry into communication, especially when it came to mobile phones, right? But congratulations on all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's so good because there's less filters, you know, like there is in email, and you might get a 30% on average open rate in an email. In an SMS, it's probably closer to the 98%. There's not too many people that don't open an SMS. And so yeah, so it's all for that strategy. It's all about reactivating a database. So
Mm,
sending messages to existing clients that perhaps haven't purchased for a while. And like your book is all about owning your own media.
oh, media, yeah.
Yeah, it's you know having it's along those lines, mate. So it's all about having your own database, owning. You know that's, as you probably know, is one of the most powerful things you can do. No one can take that away from you. They're your customers, and having a way to contact those customers is really, really useful if you're wanting to scale at a very cost-effective cost per lead, right?
Absolutely. Now, you just touched upon something that's very near and dear to me, which is database management, owning that particular platform or the way, the direct connection that you have to your customer. Now, you've actually built, you had a naturopathy business, you've built 3 health stores in there before you've even hit your major success. And obviously, what you needed to do was sell product and move some sort of stuff to customers in order for them to buy. What was a lesson from those chapters that a lot of people completely mistake, especially about owning that line of connection to your customer?
Yeah, I didn't start early enough, unfortunately, and I really wish I had. And I'd been told by a bunch of different business mentors over the years, you've got to build your database. And of course, I said, yeah, I'll do that, I'll do that. But I feel uncomfortable asking for contact details, etc., for people. So that was something I just had to freaking get over and get on with it because that's what you need to do for business. And so in the early days when I built 3 health shops and a vitamin supplement brand that I sold across Australia. And I just wish I had created a database then, and I didn't. And it was ridiculous because it doesn't matter what and I've been in a bunch of businesses, as you mentioned, there's about 19 that I've done in the past. Some of those are active, some of those I've sold, some of them I've shut down. Some of them were really good and some of them were really crap, but it's a learning process. So, and it's a big journey. But regardless, like you've got to have a database. You've just got to freaking have a database. Because you can use it across so many different platforms. You don't have to just keep that for that business and that entity and that category only. You know, it's so applicable. Once you build trust and you have a name and a brand and a reputation, then it's so easy to transfer that to whatever business you go into. So, and I really, really should have done that because in the health industry, I was very much focused on building that trust and really helping people on a cellular level, you know, to improve their health. And there's a lot of trust that goes into that concept because you have to know you're trusting who's giving you that information you trust. So that database should have come across to my future businesses, which it didn't. Anyway, learnt the lesson, started building the database in the food industry. So now we've got around 12 to 14,000 people on our database, and now we're starting to actually reactivate that database and fire it up. So it's no good just having a database. You actually have to keep it warm and relative and relevant. We've got to be working on that database, but it is such an important thing because when you become the brand, it's very, very transferable to whatever industry you're in, or if you sell a business, and it's you still behind the brand, then whatever you can bring that pull with you, and that trust already is there as long as you've got a way of reaching out to those people.
Now, you've been on big platforms. I mean, obviously, you've been on Shark Tank, which obviously would have given you a lot of exposure and things of that nature. Somebody would argue and say, maybe I'll just do a TED Talk, depending on what, stage they are in their business, or, what their customer base resonates to, and things like that. And Shark Tank is one of those, at the top of your game, especially if you're in the SaaS or technology sort of space, where a lot of people, even if you're not funded, but people now are exposed to your brand. Wouldn't that be enough for somebody to just go by that and just find yourself in these different platforms and borrow other people's audiences?
Fantastic, and I love the idea of borrowing other people's audiences. That's a huge point that we really focus on, and we do that through joint ventures. But you've got to, yeah. So we got to continue to be in that attention. Everyone has a very limited attention span and is very diluted. When I did Shark Tank, there wasn't so much social media around at the stage, and it was fantastic because TV was so dominant as a form of attention grabbing media. Now things have rapidly changed. I mean, my kids, for example, barely ever watch TV. I don't think they ever watch TV. It's all YouTube and self directed program. And it's quite funny. I had the radio on the other day, and an ad came on the radio. My 12-year-old said, "Oh, wow, what's that?" And because I just went immediately to change channels, and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That's really interesting. Can I listen to that?" And I said, "Mate, it's an ad. I need to change the channel." And he was saying, "No, no, don't. This is great. I love this." And it was such a novelty for him to hear an ad. It's just bizarre when you think of it. I mean, we're brought up with all that stuff, but yeah, the attention, and he was over it in about 20 minutes after listening to this radio station with different ads. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm bored now." So anyway, but that's what we're competing for, is that attention span, right? And so finding relevant information that we can keep in front of people, and also doing the things like the joint ventures are phenomenal, because as we were talking about, it taps into your ultimate existing database of people. And why create that database just on your own? Why not collaborate with other partners that you can share equal value with, to them and to their audience, and you all benefit? And that's one of the big strategies that we really focus on, is scaling businesses that I'm involved in. And we also have a bookkeeping firm that we've created that is all about that business growth. We do bookkeeping. I've got a phenomenal team at really competitive rates, like unbelievably low rates, but really high level CPAs and certified accountants. But we factor that business growth in, so people can come and get the bookkeeping and the business growth together. And a lot of that business growth we focus on with the clients is finding joint venture partners that they can really offer lots and lots of value to and get rewarded for it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
congratulations on that front. But Nathan, you've, I think the last time I spoke to you, you already made it. You've achieved a seven-figure exit, and most people spend all their lives chasing that moment. Now, what does it actually feel like to get there and still want to do more stuff?
Yeah, well, I remember for the health shop exits where I had the three health shops and the supplement brand, and I exited out of that. I remember just one day swimming in the ocean and just feeling so relaxed that I didn't have staff, I didn't have anything else to think about or worry about. And yeah, it was fantastic for about 24 hours. And then and then I realized, what's next? We can't just sit there. There's too many things that I want to achieve, and even that in itself is great, but it's not where I want to be. There's so many more opportunities out there, and there's so many things that I want to experience in the business world. I mean, everything that I do is business focused. So there's just so many, as I say, so many problems out there that we can help with solutions within business and be commercially rewarded for it. So yeah, it's just the start of the journey as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think so many people don't quite realize that that which we actually chase is literally, not what it's all cut out to be, because what are you going to do after that? That's that's the whole thing. But obviously with such a success, does that make you lazy, or does that make you actually a little more dangerous because now you know what's possible and you continuously want to maybe one up yourself or help others along the way, like you're now doing in the process with the bookkeeping?
Well, it's funny. It made at the time there was a bit of an ego thing that occurred, and after exiting that, you think you're pretty bulletproof when it comes to business, and life always has a different approach for you. And so after that, I thought, well, this is great. That was quite successful, but what's next? And then I went into restaurants and found multiple ways of losing lots of money doing that. So there's always that side of life, just keeping you balanced, which is absolutely fine. It's all part of the learning journey, the ups and downs. As long as you keep going, I think as long as you see it as a bit of a marathon rather than a sprint, you learn so much from the downs. You learn more from the downs than you do from the ups, and it's a great regulator because you realize ways that you never want to have happen again. You get some pretty good rail guards in place to say, all right, on our next adventure, let's not do X, Y, and Z. Let's leave those learning curves out of it, and let's find a way of scaling without so much infrastructure or without so much investment, or how can we do it so that we can test the market first, or all the questions that you actually should have asked rather than just rushed into it. Because I find there's a lot of you can just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it when it comes to business. And that's a lesson that I really focus hard. So if anyone's out there looking at starting a business or growing business, as I say, just because you can and you got the skill set, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good concept to do. Now I really look at what's the maximum upside, how much energy is required from me and my life energy, how much time is required for me to put into it, and how scalable is it on automation without me being there, or having the right partners to do the operational parts so that I can just focus on the growth parts. So there's a bunch of things that I've learned from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You see, in
Yeah.
my culture, we've got a statement, Nathan, that says, if you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go together. And I can imagine with seven figures burning a hole in your pocket, you would definitely be describing yourself as bulletproof. I mean, you would be untouchable in that sort of space. But you say there was things that started showing that then made you realize, wait a minute, there's more learning that needs to start happening. Now, for a lot of people that might be going through that, you see, fish don't see the water that they swim in. What were the first signs that things weren't going according to plan?
Yeah, well, that was when we built the first business, and that went really, the first restaurant, and that went really well. That was the one we pitched on Shark Tank. So we
Right.
thought, well, doing one is good, so surely three must be better. So we went and we opened up in the busiest locations I could find. So rents were high, footprint was low. The concept of the restaurant was that it would have a very small footprint, but the demographics were completely wrong. So we made that mistake, burnt a whole bunch of money doing it on a upfront basis for the build of the restaurants, and then the demographics were wrong. So people were coming up, and it was a pasta business and restaurant, and when a common question is what is spaghetti, when the customer comes up to the counter, we sort of started thinking, probably should have done our research a little bit better, as in done some research rather than none on the demographics of the area to make sure that the product was the right fit. So anyway, that's all part of that learning curve that you go through, and I feel as long as you transmute that into this is a great learning curve rather than this is a failure, then you can use that going forwards, and it won't stop you from the next venture.
You see, learning is holistic. First, you learn with the physical aspect of, oh my God, money is actually being drained, the pain
Right.
becomes a financial pain. And then you also have an emotional pain that comes along with it. One which is, wait a minute, I have done this before. Why is this not working? Or have I picked? So what was actually
Yep.
happening inside of you, maybe personally, business wise, while all of this was unfolding? Because this wasn't just an isolated incident.
Mm, absolutely. So, yeah, on a daily basis, it went on for a couple of years. And I
Mm.
think as an entrepreneur, it's really, really important to be able to get over that ego that it's not working. And you can either go two ways, two main ways is, all right, I can buckle down and I can spend a lot of more of my life energy trying to fix this problem. Or you can say, stuff it. Let's draw a line in the sand and let's get rid of it, because my energy is better spent and my time is better spent on other things that I'm better at. So within that business, we had a bunch of other angles that we were working on. So I had a retail line of foods that I was producing, and they were starting to go really well. They were selling at markets, and I was running 5 different retail stores in at the same time as these restaurants, and those were doing really, really well. So I thought, well, yes, I can put more energy into turning these restaurants around. At what price? That's going to mean that I take my attention off the other successful parts of the business and get these restaurants up and running, which could or may not have panned out, may have gone either way. It could have just wasted more time and more energy. So eventually I let the ego down a little bit and I said, right, let's shut these down. And we sold one and I just shut one down, and the other's still going well. But as an entrepreneur, that's sometimes a very difficult decision to make. I wasn't able to fix that with the current situation that I had, with the current amount of time that I had available, etc. But it's a great decision to do, because once I did it, I felt so free. I was able to walk away from those situations and I was able to double down in the areas that were really, really working well. And then off the back of the areas that were working well, those parts of the business that were scaling and getting growth, I could double down and triple down and really, really hone in on those areas. And I think that freedom that gives you and that decision is fine, because often we're playing with that mindset of, if I walk away from that, I'm a failure.
Mm.
And you've got to be aware of the chatter that goes on in the mind, and you're thinking, oh, people will come up to me and all sorts of crazy stories that you play in your mind. And as it happened, I think one person commented, said, oh, your store's not there anymore. Your restaurant's not there. I said, yeah, we decided to shut it down. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. So it's funny what your mind puts you through, and the unnecessary crap that you have to sort of wade through to get to a good decision. To, like, it's just a decision. We've got to take the emotion out of it and say, my energy's not worth spent there. Let's spend it on areas that really, really produce the results. So that's the challenge.
More like making mountains just out of little anthills, you know what I mean? You
Mm,
over exaggerate, the outcome and how people are going to respond to whatever it is that you are calling it, whether failure or
yeah.
the downfall of it. But Nathan, you were rightfully and justified. I mean, somebody who's been on Shark Tank, somebody who's done seven figures, opened three restaurants. You know what I mean? And now you're having to beg humble pie from one of your restaurants. You know, it's one of those things that even yourself will be like, whoa, what's happening? And you often talk, you are talking right now, having to move from that ego or that arrogance to humility. It takes a redemptive amount of self-knowledge to have that understanding that, wait a minute, this might not be the right path. What was the hardest truth that you had to accept about yourself at that point?
Yeah, I think being able to not care about what people think and instead think of the best outcome for yourself. I think that was the challenge that I had. And you go, there was a lot of what will people think, what will it mean to me as well, not to be able to complete on a successful to successfully complete on a venture. And then you just think, well, hang on a second, stuff it. Who cares? Literally, who cares? No one cares. We've got to start doing the best thing for the big picture and for ourselves. So it was at the end, it was like a very, very easy decision after you come to a bit of a learning process on that and just drop the ego, see what the best outcome is. Who gives a shit? Literally, who cares? As long as we're moving forwards, it doesn't matter. So, no, no, no regrets with that.
You know what I like about that, because you said, when one of the restaurants was closed, somebody just asked, oh, your store is not there anymore, and that was it. End of story. They moved on, you moved on, and
Mm,
now you can imagine if you were holding on to that store at, let's
mm,
say, $100,000 a day. That is money that you were just spending without
mm.
anybody even betting an eyelid that the actual thing exists. And kudos for you to having realized that. But today you're now known for the test and measure philosophy. Could you walk us through what that is, and what that framework does for people that follow it?
Yeah, there's so many easy ways now to test and measure a business before it takes off, before you invest significantly into it. And I feel a lot of that's all about creating an amazing offer. And the better the offer is, the more attractive, the more sexy you can make that offer, the easier it is to say yes to, and the harder it is to say no to, and it becomes a no-brainer. So most people, when they're testing and measuring, focus on just the mechanics of the business, whereas the offer is going to be the first thing that attracts the attention from a customer, and it's going to be the most important thing for conversion. So if we can make a truly spectacular offer, that it's got to have a few different elements. It mustn't cost you any money. So you can't do a lost leader unless there's a backup plan to cover significant money. But when we're doing lots of joint ventures and creating offers, we can't be out of pocket for it because it's just not scalable. So we've got to find creative ways of creating an amazing offer and testing and measuring it and ensuring that there's no money leaking from our pocket, because if that's the case, we can scale it infinitely and we can grow it and we can joint venture with multiple partners, and there's no limit to it. There's no limit to the growth. So that's one of the key foundations when you're creating a joint venture partnership, and you're creating an offer and you're testing and measuring to see how effective an offer is it can't cost you a cent. It's got to be creatively structured so that you can bring massive value, but you can do the deal all day long. So that's one of the key aspects. There's a bunch of other things with creating offers and testing and measuring that I help people with, especially in the bookkeeping side of things, where we sit down and we say, all right, let's create an offer that is so special that it's very, very hard to ignore. And there's loads of creative ways of doing it, because you can get other partners. You can bring, if you're doing a joint venture, say, and creating an offer for a client, for a partner's clientele. So in a joint venture, there's three people involved. Yeah, yourself, your own business, your partner's business, whoever you're teaming up with, and your partner's clients. So that offer has to obviously hit those your partner's clients, and it has to be very, very special. So you got to start looking for creative ways, asking yourself, how can I make an offer so attractive that it just totally disrupts the industry? I want to totally change it. We're not talking about a 5% discount or a 10% discount. We want to find offers that are so attractive, like free beer for a year, or something absolutely crazy that's going to disrupt the pattern of people, and it's going to attract attention. So if you, for example, if you and I work together and we said, all right, I've got actually, which is, we can actually do this. I've got, we do bookkeeping. What sort of offer can I give to all your listeners? It might be something like, let's say, free beer for a year, right? As much beer as you want. Then what I'd do is I'd go out and I'd look for a beer partner. So someone who manufactures beer, and say, look, we've got this great database of X amount of thousands of people. We'd love to put you forward. Do you often, can you structure something that we can really promote your business with, and do a win-win strategy? So it doesn't always have to come out of your own pocket. You can think creatively and bring other partners in that will benefit as well. And there's no limit to the tiers of people that you can put into that joint venture to create a phenomenal outcome for everyone.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that, because at the end of the day, so many people going at it alone,
Yeah,
and I
in
blame I
business.
blame Hollywood, Nathan, for this, because have
Yeah.
you ever watched those Western movies where the ranger, or what's the
The
guy
Lone
on the
Ranger.
horse? Yeah, the Lone Ranger comes into a saloon and opens those sliding doors, and then he goes in, orders a whiskey, and by the time he turns around, the whole town is behind him, and then he just starts kicking them and beating them up, and everybody else is now nursing their wounds, and then he jumps on his horse and rides into the sunset. And I
That's right.
feel like everybody is enamored to that story, but I don't feel like we go far. Now, you've been talking about offers and things that you're putting in the marketplace there, and hinting a little bit about the bookkeeping practice. Tell us a little bit about Numberfield. What's happening there, and what are people walking away with? I heard free beer. Is that
Free beer for everyone. Don't quote me on that one, actually.
yeah.
I'd have to set up a joint venture with a beer company first. But yeah, like for number five, what we do is it's a bookkeeping business, and I built that because I always wanted something that I never got from a bookkeeper or an accountant. I always wanted them to actually be involved in directing and helping me grow my businesses. And I never got it. I mean, I was barely lucky to get a bookkeeper that was slightly proactive. In fact, I don't think I ever had that either. So it was funny because I was looking for an accountant for one of my businesses a couple of years ago. And I reached out, I called 21 different accountants around Australia. And I was looking for, really hungry for an accountant that could actually be that could offer me something of value, and that stood out a bit. And every single accountant said, we're great for compliance, we're phenomenal for compliance, we'll give you compliance until the cows come home. And the other thing was, and you should choose us over the other 10,000 accountants in Australia based on the fact that I've been doing this for 150 years, right? So, and they all thought they were differentiating their offer. Every one of them thought they were quite, I could see they were quite comfortable sitting back on that offer. And it was like, nah, that's not about me. It's not about my business. What are you going to do for my business? And I spoke to a bunch of mates around this time, and I said, have you ever had a bookkeeper or an accounting firm that's done your business accounts and actually got involved in the growth side? Actually held you accountable and followed up with you, made sure you're paying your bills on time, made sure that you're actually getting growth, focusing on the numbers and then converting them into growth. And they all sort of just laughed and said, yeah, no, that just doesn't happen. So I thought, well, why not? That's what I want. That's the dream. So that's when we really formalized Numberfied. We built that as a business, and it was all about doing the bookkeeping, all that boring stuff that I don't get excited about, but needs to be done to keep your business very, very up to date. But then layer on top of that actual business growth consulting and coaching as you go. So, meeting with our clients once a month, a minimum of once a month, and creating a community where we can all help each other and grow each other's businesses, and a community where we help them in sales and negotiation and how to close deals and creating an ultimate the most amazing offer that you can create, and how to do a joint venture, how to execute on a joint venture so that everyone wins and it doesn't cost you a cent, and you can tap into massive databases of other people's that already exist without having to build your own client base. So that's where we built Number Five. That's where I'm really passionate about, because it's basically in essence bringing all the practice that I've had over since I was 6 and started my first business, and bringing all those learning curves, all those failures, all those successes in together, and helping people, because it is, as you mentioned, the Lone Ranger is a kind of, in businesses, are very lonely. A lot of people are solopreneurs and all just doing it together, and often the staff and the team don't get the concept of the entrepreneurship that's involved in leading that team. So that's where we're trying to bring this community together and help people and bring them all those skill sets that you need to have to really, really grow. So that's the concept behind that one.
So that it takes an entrepreneur to create a product and an offer that is really needed in the marketplace. Because if you really look at the facets of business that grow a business, is the marketing, the operations, and the finance side of things. And I think a lot of bookkeepers and accounting firms are missing out on that opportunity to actually partner with businesses so that they become that strategic
Yeah,
of finance. And I think you've literally created that because you would have wanted something like this to exist, in the time that you were growing and putting everything else together. Because I believe if you had a sound financial partner during the time that you were running the restaurants, it would have been a completely different channel, because
absolutely.
the accountant would have been screeching and saying, wait a minute, I think we're hemorrhaging money here.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
you as an entrepreneur, you just continuously want to make sure the marketing and the
Trying to
operations
make it work.
side of
Yep.
things are running. And I feel like there's a need for this. Like, what's the
Mm.
response with the work that you've been doing so far? And I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so currently we've got a few clients in Australia and a few in the US.
All
So in
right.
the US, we focus because I run this business with my sister. She's very strong in the real estate industry in the US, and she's got a lot of skill set in there. So the business growth coaching is all around the real estate side of things on from her end, and it's all around the business coaching from my end. And we're also doing a bit of work for a couple of accountants. So we do the back end office work for them. But we're about to sort of reach out a little bit more and say, look, to accountants, why don't we partner? Why don't we collaborate together? We can support you with the back end services and also give your clients business growth, because that's something that's absolutely unique and every business wants it. I have never come across a business, unless they're ready for retirement, I've never come across a business that doesn't passionately want to grow their sales or their profitability. I mean, if you don't, you probably shouldn't be in business. It's the wrong place to hang out, right? So, yeah, the feedback is, and we did a bit of research. One of the studies that was done by Squarespace a couple of years ago, it showed that the number one priority of all business owners that they researched was business growth. That's the number one driving desire of anyone in business. So hopefully we can tick a few boxes when it comes to that, and collaborating with different businesses out there to say, we'll do your bookkeeping and you get free business growth sort of factored in, which you should have, because that's what bookkeeping and accounting should be, in my mind anyway.
What you're presenting and what you're bringing to the table is something obviously when somebody's building a business, they're building something that will then later on create freedom for themselves and essentially time and all the things that they want. And then the growth of it all is just so that they can be able to purchase assets that would then be the things that actually do create that freedom that you're talking about. So when your books are in order, your business is being directed by, somebody who's got all this expertise that you now have, and there's an opportunity to have an exit through real estate and things of that nature. That's like a nice hand holding, cross section of what every business really needs. And I kind of feel like you've stopped becoming a business growth expert. You've now become that professional growth or mistake translator, and you turn these expensive lessons into affordable shortcuts for everybody else that's out there in the marketplace. And where can people get some of this awesomeness? Where can people go on the internet to connect with this?
Well, that's exactly it, Prosper. We're trying to move people from operations to growth mode as quickly as possible. Using all our lessons and our trials and tribulations that we've been through, and we're trying to just shortcut that for people because damn it, that's exactly what I wanted, back when I was starting my entrepreneurial journey. So, yeah, so numberfied, numbfied.com is our website. But feel free to reach out, Nathan Baws on LinkedIn or nathanbaws.com. Always happy to connect. And maybe we can even offer listeners a special little prosper deal for some bookkeeping and business growth if that's something that might be open,
Oh,
you might be open to. Yeah.
sure. I'm actually thinking more, like bringing a whole bunch of people into a nice little Zoom room and get them to actually see what's possible, because this is not what a lot of and I'm sorry, I'm friends with a lot of accountants, but nobody is doing this,
Mm.
especially like a lot of business people start a business predicated on just their expertise, and they don't have the financial know-how to actually then grow the business. And I think if you keep up with this, you will single-handedly change that statistic that businesses don't go past the 3 year mark or the 5 year
Yeah,
mark. It's only because people are not taught the financial side of
absolutely.
business.
They don't have the support, and even it's a bit off topic at the moment, but one of our other businesses that we're involved in is actually teaching kids at school age about financial literacy and entrepreneurship. So it's got to start at those foundations. But let's cut to the chase right now. Also, with people who are actively in business, we've got to give them more support, and they've got to stop being this solopreneur, doing it all on your own. A team and collaborating is way, way more effective. We're going to get way better outcomes if we all work together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. And you also do have a community that you have come up together, or was I seeing things? Have you created a business collective that people can also be a part of, or is this
Yeah,
part of the? Yes, yes.
that's in startup. So we're putting together a little website that we can actually showcase everyone's businesses and help them sell it, and everyone sort of get a commission from selling other people's services, so that we all collectively grow and benefit together. So yeah, that's a little startup that's on the side at the moment, but working towards that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, is it fair to then say you've built a thing that you wish existed when you needed help the most?
100%, 100%. Yeah. I remember starting off at a very young age and having no idea about building a business. We thought making money was physically making a coin or a note. So at that age, imagine if we were introduced to education around this to show you how to build a business at a really, really young age. But it's never too late. We can start now. We can all get the help that we need.
Absolutely. And speaking
Yeah.
of young age, Nathan, I mean, obviously you've done quite a lot. The exits, the Shark Tank, the restaurants, everything else along the way. Now you're literally, bringing back life or breathing back life into a lot of businesses that had been forgotten by the system. If you could say maybe go back to that young age, young entrepreneur who's maybe just achieved your first seven-figure exit, what sort of advice would you give him today, knowing what you now know about life, business, and everything else that comes along with it?
Straight after that exit, it would be about doing due diligence and research, whatever, thinking through the next business before you just jump into it in a crazy manner. And then the next thing following that would be how can you structure your time so that you are spending 80% minimum on business growth and 20% on operations maximum. So how do you move from operations to growth as quickly as possible? And you'd be surprised, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it with elimination and delegation and automation, and also outsourcing and things like that, and AI. There's a bunch of different ways that will help you facilitate that. But that is the key, really, to move as quickly as you possibly can to working on the business and not in the business. So,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, you have given us food for thought here today. And I know a lot of people are going to be, knocking on their accountant's door right now and asking them, hey, why don't you shape up a little bit? Or if not,
Mm,
I will put the links so that you can check out number 5 there and then see if that
awesome.
will be the next call to action. And I would actually put it across this, Nathan. I don't know how you feel about this. If somebody's watching this right now and they are almost about to get their financial year or end of financial year stuff done by their accountant, just look at the speed and the time it takes for them to actually get around to your account. And if they haven't done it in a speediest time and you're just an afterthought, I want you to click that link for number 5 below in the show notes, because that alone will show you whether you've got a team player on your business, or you just are a number in somebody's
Right.
accounting book. I don't know what you think about that, Nate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's have a half an hour chat and see what we can do for your business. If nothing else, I get excited. I love doing that sort of thing because there's so much opportunity in everyone's businesses that they're not tapping into. And it doesn't necessarily need to mean more workload, but how can we automate things to get increased sales, increased conversions, and more profit? That's, I'll do that all day, any day. So always happy to get involved.
Fantastic. Now, Nathan, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show again. I mean, obviously, that must say a lot about the platform, but
About
just
you.
but just to hear you coming back with this whole new breath of fresh air in the entrepreneurial space, I think this was well and truly, appreciated. So I really thank you for picking us as a place where you are also showcasing that which you are doing. And I can't wait to see what people are going to do with this information, man.
Yeah, pleasure. It's lovely to be back and to connect again, Prosper. So you do an amazing show, mate. So well done for continuing that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to see if my accountant concurs with that. If not, then
Come and see us. Yeah.
fantastic. And for those that are watching, thank you so much. This was an incredible conversation. I know, obviously, me and Nate know each other from a while back, but that doesn't mean when somebody has new things, we don't try and explore them and actually see the merit in what they're doing. And as you have noticed, Nathan has just showed us something most business books actually leave out. Success doesn't build character. Sometimes failure actually does. And the entrepreneur that you are, that's maybe listening to this and going through what you're going through, you just needed to know that, hey, some things are possible, or you actually can get the support that you require. So if this episode helped you maybe rethink risk, growth, leadership, and business ownership, I encourage you, first of all, share it with somebody who might be struggling with business right now. Or if you're building a business that you want to be profitable and enjoyable, I want you to click the links that are in the show notes so that you can actually get started and explore numbified, because I think the businesses that survive long term aren't always the biggest, are the ones that have the actual support that they need. Until next time, I can't wait to see what you guys will do with this information. Nate, thanks once again. Bye for now.